So first, I just want to touch again about why you want to run for governor now and why you wanted to get into this race.
Well, look, I think that the reason that we got into this race was clearly articulated in October when we put out that announcement video. And I think that that's an important point. I mean, look, I am giving up a job that I absolutely love. It's one of the greatest jobs that people in Louisiana have ever given me. We have done some great things for them. We have stood beside them, in front of them, behind them, but more importantly, for them. We've stood up for them, their families, their children, our culture, our state for the last 8 years. But I, too, like many Louisianians, have had enough. Like, at a time when, and I'd been saying this before, but Bloomberg just came out with a report that said $100 billion of individual wealth has been transferred from blue states to the South. Those are people that are moving their livelihoods, their wealth, and they're looking for states where freedom goes to live and not die. And Louisiana's not attracting them. And there's a reason why. And that's disappointing for me. And so those are one of the many driving factors that led us to announcing in October. And more importantly, when I announced, I didn't say that I was running. I said that we were running because I truly believe that if Louisiana wants to get itself off the bottom, it's not just the governor, but it's he or she has to have the people with them.
Mm-hmm. And I really want to dive into policy. You know, a lot of people know who you are, so they want to know, what are you going to do as governor if you're elected? And I asked you about this at qualifying, but I want to ask you again about early childhood education and the funding that we've put into it and teacher pay raises. How would you want to continue those teacher pay raises at the state level, and then how would you pay for them?
Well, look, I think that here's what's really important. Every time we have these gubernatorial elections, we have these very pointed, specific questions sent to candidates, under which, if we give one answer or another, then we pigeonhole into that. Look, as a business owner, I want flexibility. I can tell you this: I didn't go into the Attorney General's office 8 years ago promising or answering any of those kind of specifics as they dealt with the office, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what the particular answer was. I can tell you that certainly we may think that something's working right now, and then it doesn't. We may find out tomorrow it's not a good thing. We may find out that there's a better, more economical way to do it. And so I would tell you that everything is on the table for us to look at. And I think that we also, when it comes to education, it's important that we don't parcel the discussion of education. And that's what we've done. We said, oh, we got to focus on early childhood. Oh, we got to focus on K through 12. Oh, don't cut higher ed. How about we have a discussion from early childhood all the way through the educational opportunity of a young person, right? So that all educations lead to vocations. And so that's what I would say. I would say that we are going to look at it in a holistic approach. Because here's another thing. I'll tell you this. I just saw another recent article. This is on the higher ed side. That said that the number of degrees that young men and women are coming out of college are, a larger percentage of them, that those degrees do not allow them to then get a job to service the debt that is piled on them at the university. Well, that's a problem. We should be looking at that. And maybe we're moving too many people towards college when maybe they're not prepared to go or really want to go. And then what are we doing in the high schools to create skills and opportunities so that they can actually get great jobs? Because there are a lot of good paying jobs right now. And are we doing our best to focus on those things? And those are not, and here's another thing too, I don't think that government programs, what I've seen, the biggest problem with government programs is they're a one size fits all. Well, what's needed in a high school in Baton Rouge may not be the same thing that's needed in a high school in Monroe.
So when it comes to the teacher pay raises, it's something that you don't necessarily want to promise, but it's not off the table. Is that correct?
Well, here's the deal. Here's what I'm trying. Again, let me give you the same answer I gave you back then. Like, my mom was a school teacher. She taught in a public school system. She taught in a parochial school system. What's interesting is that you would find, I don't know if that's today, but quite frankly, in the parochial system, teachers in a lot of parochial systems, private systems, are paid less than the public system. And yet the private system seems to turn out a better educated child in the public system. So should the focus be on teacher pay? I'm not saying teachers don't deserve pay. They should be compensated adequately. But think about this broad brush question you're asking me. And think about that. Why is it in a private educational setting, teachers make less? Maybe. They used to. I don't know. You might correct me. But yet we're turning out better educated kids. Now, I'm not saying we're gonna reduce the pay of public school teachers, but how about we have the discussion of how do we fix the education for the child? What in a teacher's pay raise is going to guarantee me that those children are receiving an education? That 74% of third graders, or that all third graders are leaving third grade being able to read, and that all eighth graders are being able to leave eighth grade able to do basic math.
And I want to turn now to crime, and I know that's something that you have really touched on and worked a lot on over the past few years, but I would like to know just a few specific policies that you would like to see the legislature put forward should you be elected.
Yeah, look, I think the first thing we're going to do is go into a crime session. Special session on crime. Okay, why? Because we got 3 cities in the top 10 most dangerous cities in the entire country. Like when I tell people that on the campaign trail, and I give them a pause and let that sink in, because if I ask you, like, give me some major cities in the United States, Shannon, what would you tell me? You think of Detroit, Atlanta, Houston, Dallas, maybe New Orleans, right? Los Angeles. Like, you could probably name me 10 big cities, and yet we've got 3 cities in the top 10 most dangerous cities. That means we've got some structural problems in our criminal justice system. And so we need to go in there and create transparency so that we can create accountability. We have to have some truth in sentencing that says that we can actually determine how long a person is going to prison for without some sort of fuzzy math, because I'm dealing with the lawsuits and that kind of fuzzy math. And we may want to look at things like what the federal system has. The federal system has a very structured sentencing guidelines. You break the law at the federal level, you know how long you're going to jail for. If they say you're going for a year, you're doing 8.5 months. And so I think that the people of this state deserve transparency, accountability, and truth in sentencing.
And speaking of transparency, there's been discussion of possible legislation to put a reasonable deadline for law enforcement offices, for body cam footage with police-involved shootings to be released within about a week, or a reasonable amount, but much sooner. If that were to cross your desk, how would you feel about that?
Well, I don't know. I'm trying to understand what that's going to do to overall drop crime. I don't know. I mean, that is
just to have more transparency and allow.
Well, does it? It adds more transparency in putting criminals behind bars. I don't buy that. I mean, look, that has never come before me. That's never been a discussion. I don't know where you get that question. I haven't seen legislation as of such. Look, what I'm focused on. Look, I have a track record of putting bad cops in jail. That's already done. Okay. Also have a record of standing up for the police and not letting, those who think the police may have broke the law just go and basically prosecute them when the law doesn't and the evidence doesn't support that. I don't think our problem is I don't think our crime problem in this state is the police.
No, I don't believe anyone's saying that. I believe it is born out of the Ronald Greene case and the police video being released later.
But again, we're going back to splitting hairs, okay? I mean, in the Ronald Greene case, if my memory serves me correct, the last couple of officers that went before federal grand juries were acquitted.
Of some of the more minor charges, I believe.
Yeah, and so again, I'm not diving into. I'm just saying that's a discussion that right now is not doing us anything to drop the overall murder rate in Baton Rouge, and New Orleans, or Shreveport. Sure. That's the discussion I want to have.
In the special session that you would want to call on crime, what specific policies would you want, or laws that you would want to change to try to tackle that session?
Well, look, a good general would never lay out his plan of attack. I mean, criminals watch the news too. Here's what I'll tell you. Again, in basic broad strokes. We want to create legislation that increases transparency, accountability, and truth in sentencing. We want to be able to hold those accountable in the criminal justice system who may not be doing their job accountable. It's something that we did in the legislation that didn't make it out the Senate when we tried to create some transparency and accountability in the clerk's offices through the clerk of courts for victims out there. Because we still haven't, in all the questions you asked me about crime, we never talked about victims.
Well, certainly, that was Debbie Villio's bill, correct? The one, the truth and transparency. Is that something that you would want to try and bring back in the future?
Absolutely. We're coming back right with that. We're going to pass that bill.
And your special session on crime, would that be in the first year of your administration?
That would be in the first 2 days.
Okay. Well, I look forward.
Hopefully that's what, I mean, it would be very close to after being sworn in, like immediately. That's where we're going.
And another special session that people are calling for is on insurance. That is a major crisis that a lot of people are dealing with. How would you want to tackle the insurance issue?
Yeah, well, look, I think that first of all, we can't tackle the insurance crisis without having the person in charge of insurance at the table, which is the Commissioner of Insurance. My understanding is that his opponent dropped out, I think.
Yeah, Mr. Temple is the commissioner-elect.
So I think that I will tell you this. He and I have had numerous discussions about making sure that we have open lines of communication and that we can lend each of us the support that our offices respectively would have to overall drop the property crime problem. But I'll say this. I've already done something. I've sued FEMA so that we can try to create some stability in the flood insurance market. Because if we don't, then because it's like step 1 and 2. We've got 2 crises at hand. People haven't realized it yet. But even if you lower the overall property insurance and then the flood insurance escalates, well, how much good have you done? Plus, the more important point is that you don't have a lot of flexibility in whether or not you can have or not have flood insurance, right? If you don't have flood insurance, you can't get a mortgage. And so we've already, as Attorney General, as I said earlier, over the last 8 years, we've been protecting the people in Louisiana. Every time we see an opportunity to ensure that we can further protect the state, we do. And we did. We took action this year.
And what's the status of that case? Have you worked with FEMA at all for more transparency about the risk rating 2.0?
No, we sued him.
You sued him, right? Well, what kind of answers came from that?
Well, we're in the courts right now. In fact, we were supposed to have a hearing on an injunction that got delayed, and we're trying to get that hearing reset. So what we're going for is an injunction that says, before we have any discussions with y'all, we want you to stop. We want to pause. We want the status quo right now for our citizens in this state so they don't have to worry.
Mm-hmm. And I want to talk to you about some of the social issues that really took a lot of focus of this last legislative session, especially the ones around the LGBTQ community in the state. My understanding is that you were in support of overturning the governor's veto of the ban on gender-affirming care for minors. Is that correct, sir?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. All the states around us, as I said earlier, $100 billion of individual wealth has left blue states and gone to red states. And every one of the states, I'm pretty sure, had already been protecting minors. So I don't know why this is even a discussion. And quite frankly, again, I'm focused on crime, education, and the economy. All right? Again, it's the law now. And I think overwhelmingly, the state has spoken on that issue.
Sure, and I'll ask you about a bill that I know will be coming back next session because Dodie Horton has said she wants to bring it back. It would prohibit the discussion of gender identity and sexual orientation in the classroom. Would you support that bill if it passed?
Well, look, I'm certainly open for discussion on that. I'm concerned about that as well. Listen, it's hard to have a discussion and reach a consensus when we can't have a firm when we can't come to an agreement on things that are factual. You were born a woman. That's an absolute fact. I was born a man. There's no changing that, okay? And so, this whole discussion to me is problematic. And I don't know how you can reach a consensus on things that because you're trying to make a truth an untruth. It's a fact. You were born a woman. I was born a man. I mean, that's it. You know? I mean, there's some people, it doesn't matter. I mean, I'd like to be 6'5" and play in the NBA. But no matter how much I want to identify as a 6'5" basketball player, I don't think I'm making the NBA anytime soon.
Would you be open to having discussions with transgender people to explain their situation and talk about why?
Well, look, I'm always open to have them talk to me. But again, we have to start from the facts. Look, as a lawyer, my job, you hire me. I got to go argue your case on the facts and what the evidence is. Okay? I can't suppose something. I can't create something out of thin air. I can only go with what the actual facts are. Things that are objective, not subjective.
And I want to talk to you also about abortion. There's been discussion about potentially adding exceptions for rape and incest into the law. Would you support that?
Look, that's a very tough discussion. I mean, there's a lot of emotion on both sides. I would start from the fact that that when you talk about those exceptions, we're also talking about a crime as well. And we're also talking about someone, that woman especially, about the emotional challenges, the things that they're going through. Look, I'm open to having that discussion. I think it's going to be a discussion that's going to be had in the legislature. And I would tell you that I want to listen to what those discussions are and exactly how that plays out. But we want to make sure, look, in that sense, again, and it's part of the crime portion too, right? Mm-hmm. We want to create a criminal system that dissuades people from engaging in that type of conduct. The more we reduce that type of conduct, the more that doesn't become an issue.
Sure. And in regards to abortion, with the abortion ban that's currently in place in law, there have been some cases where doctors have been hesitant to perform the life-saving care to save the mother due to the fear of the liability they have of the potential jail time. What's kind of your response to that fear that some doctors may have?
They evidently have not read the letter that we put out way at the very beginning. And I would tell you that doctors that are doing that are more likely to be exposing themselves of severe malpractice. The law in Louisiana is extremely clear, okay? What it really does, what the law, it gives that doctor the ability to address the health care of the mother. And really, as long as they're not terminating or aborting a healthy pregnancy that's unwanted, then the law gives them plenty of latitude to address emergency situations. So doctors that are saying, I keep hearing doctors are saying that, but I can't find a doctor to come to my office and let us go through the law. We have worked with the board of medical examiners to clearly help to dispel those things, and so I don't believe it. I haven't seen that.
And there's been discussion about potentially clarifying the viability list, the list of conditions that the fetus could have that would allow for an abortion. There's still a lot of things that aren't involved.
Well, but again, we haven't. Well, again, I mean, look, I think the laws that we have are great. Okay, look, my mother was an unbelievable pro-life activist. She believed in the sanctity of life. And I think that Louisiana has led on that time and time again. And the great thing about Louisiana is that we also show that we're compassionate as well. And so at a time when Roe has been overturned, I think our focus should go back to the woman, right? And who may find themselves in a very uncomfortable position. And how do we grant them support? How do we help, again, allowing healthy pregnancies and those babies to find a great place in life? And so that's the discussion I want to have.
And also a discussion that's been dubbed as a pro-life discussion is around the death penalty. First, what are your thoughts on the death penalty?
Well, I don't believe that the death penalty is a pro-life issue. because everyone on death row has taken a life or more other lives. So I don't know. I don't believe that those two. I know people like to put them together, but the person who's on death row has taken a bunch of lives.
Sure. But I want to talk to you about how the clemency hearings that's currently going on with Governor John Bel Edwards.
I think that is ridiculous. Let me tell you, there are families out there who have gone through not one, but 2 trials. So for a person to get the death penalty, they first have to be convicted by unanimous jury. And then the Senate, you go through the sentencing phase, which is, are you going to grant them the capital punishment, which is another round of voting. Then those families go through appeals processes. They have to relive all of those tragedies. And the state has promised them justice. That's a contractual obligation. Right now, the state has promised families around Louisiana their justice that they signed up for, by the way. They participated in because that's what they wanted. When we don't administer that justice, we erode the system.
And so the state has also not performed a lethal injection in over 10 years. Would you be open to the law changing to allow other options to avoid those court challenges with lethal injection?
Well, we have litigated all of those issues as Attorney General. It is open right now. I sent a letter to the governor. You go look it up. The only thing that is standing in the way of those executions is the governor. That's it. I mean, there's nothing. We don't have to worry about that. I mean, we look. Texas is doing it. Arkansas is doing it. Mississippi is doing it. And when I say they're doing it, you know what they're doing? They're administering the justice and granting the people, the victims out there, the justice that has been promised to them.
So am I safe to assume that should you become the governor that you would give the green light for these injections to take place?
Absolutely. 100%.
All right, sir. Well, I want to change gears a little bit over to energy production because Louisiana is a major oil and gas industry, but there's been a lot of moves to add more green energy, such as offshore wind and solar. Would you be in support of continuing that diversification?
Well, look, I've always been an all of the above, but I'm not an all of the above if it doesn't make sense. What concerns me the most is that we continue to go down a path of trying to offload our energy needs on unreliable sources of energy. That's a big problem. We've seen what happens when we do that already in a very smaller scale. The more we do that, the more we not only risk our current standard of living, but we actually decline our current standard of living. And I'll say this too. The oil and gas industry, the great people that have worked in it, from upstream to midstream to downstream, have lifted more people out of poverty than any other industry in the world, globally. I don't think that some of those others can say that. In fact, if you find some, you let them know because I want to debate them. There is no industry that has lifted more people out of poverty than the oil and gas and the traditional forms of energy. But again, we are open. We're open. I think we can have a discussion, but what I want to make sure is that the people of this state, as governor, I want to make sure that the people of this state, that when they need the heat, they can get it. When they need the air conditioning, they can get it. When you need your light, it comes on. That's the thing that concerns me the most, is what is the reliability of the energy that we need here.
Which production methods are most unreliable to you?
Well, I mean, how about we talk about the ones that are the most reliable?
Oh, I would guess you'd say oil and gas.
Well, actually, I ventured. I think the most reliable form of energy out there, we actually have in this state and have had for quite a long time, is nuclear power. It has the smallest input for the greatest output, with the smallest footprint. And then as you go to natural gas, probably comes in right after that, and then oil, and then so forth. But when you look at that, I mean, there's no doubt. Louisiana's been a leader in that. And I mean, I think we've got 2, maybe 3 nuclear plants along the river. But again, I mean, we have been blessed with a tremendous amount of natural resources that God has gifted us, and natural gas is a very clean burning fuel and very reliable form of energy. And here's the other thing too: why is it that we have this discussion when Americans and Louisianans are allowed to buy products from China, and they're opening 6 coal-fired plants a week? Why do we consistently lead the world in carbon emission reduction, and yet Americans seem to be taxed and penalized more for actually producing cleaner air and cleaner water? Quite frankly, I think that's a discussion we should be going to have overseas rather than here in this country.
And Louisiana is poised to be a leader in the offshore wind. I know there's some leasing that's going on here soon. Would you still want to support that industry?
Look, again, we'll look at it.
All right. Well, Mr. Landry, would you like to just take a few more minutes to tell folks why they should vote for you?
Yeah, look, I think that this election is a very pivotal time for this state. It's a time under which Louisiana consistently now has sat at the bottom of all the good lists and the top of all the bad lists. We've gone through all the metrics, education, crime, and whatnot. If you're looking for someone to bring some structural change, things that other states have done that have allowed them to now beat us out, allowed them to capture our children, then guess what? I would tell them to vote for me. I mean, over the last 8 years, I've served as their Attorney General. They have seen me in action. Everything about me has been on display in a way that we've stood up for the people of this state. And we look forward to leading them and working with them to make sure that this state has a government as good as them.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Landry. Appreciate it.
Thank you.